video games.
We all know what that leads to.
What?
Violence, Joe. Video games lead to violence.
Yes. This isn't violent. It's a racing game.
It's racing today, Joe. And tomorrow, you're curb stomping a 4-year-old.
Just turn it off, Joe.
I'm gonna go for a walk.
No, you are not getting out of this.
You are the most violent person we know, Joe!
We just want you to chill out!
Look at what your anger did now, Joe!
Yeah!
Look at what you did!
You ruined my TV!
Why did you do that, Joe?
You are so selfish!
I can't believe you!
You guys are really scaring me.
This video will provide an introduction to themes circulating transgressive video gaming while also relating it to ideas of the quantified self, transgressive enabled behaviours and gamification. I will also be employing contemporary examples to demonstrate the social effects and impacts of gamified behaviour. These examples will range from character customization and video game violence. In order to understand gamification, we first need to understand how games become a frame for interpreting and interacting with others. Brook, 2011, defines play as a light-hearted use of technology or a technological system for the purposes of personal entertainment, amusement, or fun. Play is seen as a non-serious pursuit that provides downtime from the responsibilities of daily life. According to Galloway, 2006, a game is an activity defined by rules in which players try to reach some sort of goal. To paraphrase McGrath, 2004, when surveying everyday life, we see little emergence of frames involving fear, risk, and adrenaline rush. For example, are we likely to find monsters or vampires who threaten human life? The point of playing games like The Witcher, Grand Theft Auto, and the Final Fantasies is, as Gertz, 1973, argues, is that it provides a meta-social commentary. In other words, a story the players tell themselves about themselves. This forms a second-person narration of one's self-worth. Often, when players progress through story-based games, they develop a character presence that doesn't resemble themselves. These online bodies give you a freedom not associated with the real world and allow you to create a figure that you can aspire to or that you cannot achieve. These options include altering your identity, ethnicity, appearance, traits, and skills. This rationalises why 40% of game players create a character of the opposite sex. Story and gameplay exposes the boring reality of our everyday lives and keeps us delving for more meaningful patterns and progression. Game and character developments use this data to improve ourselves in a virtual reality by inciting and maintaining behaviour change by making self-improvement processes more pleasurable and fun. Take, for example, story-based games with interchanging variables that can alter over time. Depending on your input, you are given intrinsic and extrinsic rewards which increase with the more quest completions you have. Completions earn XP, or in terms of The Witcher, ability points, which can then be spent on upgrading abilities and receiving immediate results. This, in real life, would be unrealistic and harder to achieve. Thus, supporting the themes Sutton Smith, 1997, describes as a play as progress. This ideology links the rational features of games, such as formal rules, perimeters, and storylines, to the functionist understanding of play. The gamified player engages with the machine, fundamentally becoming part of an ultimate reality feedback system. The play within the digital games is then governed by the ambiguity of outcomes and the processing of real and fake world events. For example, Huizinga, 1955, argues that one of the key features of play is that the player needs to require the absolute and the supreme. In other words, the overwhelming need to be the ultimate and best player. It could then be argued that play brings a temporary, limited perfection to the imperfect confusion of everyday life, and therefore creates an exceptional situation that promotes the formation of social groups and culture. This is commonly associated with the competitive nature of PvP games. To present the thematic space of PvP games, this is an Apex Legends A Simulation trailer that launched on the 4th of February 2020.
You know what this match needs? A game changer.
Have I had enough? 'Cause I keep wrestling with shaken. Recharged and ready for battle. I got you.
Time to have some fun. It's just a bad dream.
The short PvP gameplay trailer showcases the intrinsic rewards of blood splatter and kill clips or finisher animations as a form of immediate gratification to the player for defeating an opponent, while extrinsic cosmetics are showcased as pinnacle rewards for accomplishing certain feats of malice and intent throughout a set period of time. Grinnell 1999 proposes that within a game's environment there is a tension between freedom and constraint and voluntarism and determinism, implying that play occurs as a form of social practice and that they come to operate as systems of social order. Within video games, social order is typically maintained through dialogue and feedback, such as animations of interactions and music intensity to indicate intended use, thus channeling players' behaviour into a relatively consistent manner. This is usually the case for scripted games, but not always for those with various outcomes and storylines. Goffman, 1961, states games create a shared social space and thus a structured interaction. Games are social worlds whose boundaries are sustained by the encounter itself. In other words, the encounter can quickly break down if not everyone is playing the game. Players operate within the context of the gaming encounter and are defined as such by their acting in accordance with the rules, where abandoning any of the rules may result in loss of currency or progress. In the same way, digitalized gamification leverages the feedback tools from games as part and parcel of care of the self. To put it simply, the game to be played is about the bodies and human capacities. The user sees a representation of their self in the game and engages with it. This representation lets the player know what to do next using catered feedback. Feedback thus governs behaviour as steps towards a goal are encouraged in multiple ways and channels, while steps in the wrong direction are penalised. This increases the likelihood that the reinforcement will be effective. Feedback can be immediate, with real-time data on how a player is firing an attack, but also feedback can take mid- and long-range forms, providing information on how a player is progressing with goals that take weeks, months, or even years to accomplish, such as accumulating enough game currency to afford a specific item. Furthermore, the integrity of the self is made recognisable and, more importantly, actionable, first via quantification and then by the algorithms that frame the body as something that can be measured, quantified, and then acted upon. Moreover, becoming a victorious subject of gamification is a never-ending levelling up process guided by a teleology of constant and continual improvement that is driven by an unending stream of positive feedback and virtual rewards and fueled by the notion that this process is pleasurable. The next big question is, how can video games be transgressive? It is an activity that takes place at the home, within the home, where the player simply engages with a machine, or console, or PC, fundamentally becoming part of an ultimate reality feedback system. So how could this be seen as transgressive or deviant? Little research has focused on digital leisure pastimes that include violence, yet parents and non-video game players are quick to jump to the gun to conclusions that video games are the influencer, even without having attempted to play themselves. No correlations have yet been found to suggest that there is a relationship between violent games such as GTA and Black Ops and the chances of offending or reenacting deviant tendencies in the real world. However, the reverse has proven that people who have enacted heinous deeds have cited video games as their key influencer or even practice. This adverse correlation keys into the mindset that video games have the potential to make a person more violent when only the extreme cases are being considered. Goffman, 1961, suggests a circular flow of feeling is present among participants as well as corrective compensation for deviant acts, implying that video games provide a bridge to potential transgressive behaviours. The idea that you are supported by other players playing the game and that what you are doing is okay. For instance, killing someone is wrong and immoral, however, killing someone in PvP is acceptable and celebrated. To conclude, I argue that gaming is a cultural practice that encourages the acceptance of otherwise unrealistic scenarios to stimulate an alternate reality. Regardless of the stimulated violence and socially anomic behaviour in these games, they have become a socially accepted leisure activity and will continue to become increasingly more popular. Simon 2007 notes playing a game is inherently social. One cannot play alone. Even in social games, the player is interacting with a set of cultural representations, expectations, and norms embedded in the rules, processes, and the narrative of the game and the context of play, such as AI players or online. Because of this, I believe it is difficult to inhibit how transgressive a game can be without an individual actively going out of their way to act out of game and create real harm. I also note the outweighing social benefits and individual personal developments which are as a result of increased game participation, with many choosing to join online societies and esports leagues.